Speaker.
Thank you. I call the member for Shellharbour.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, today I move that this House 1 notes the current maintenance backlog in New South Wales schools total $775 million, including over $8.5 million in schools across the Shellharbour Electorate. 2, acknowledges the concerted efforts of parents, staff and students in calling on the government to immediately address the maintenance backlog. 3, notes Oak Flats High School has a backlog of $1,777,498 and a further 5 schools within the electorate of Shellharbour has a maintenance backlog exceeding $500,000. 4, acknowledges that the current rate of expenditure, it would take more than 18 years for the maintenance backlog at Oak Flats High School to be addressed. And 5, condemns the government for its inaction in addressing the maintenance needs of schools in the Shellharbour electorate. Speaker, the current school maintenance backlog, combined with the appalling cuts to funding in Gonski 2.0 and our state's over-dependence on demountables, has exposed this government's blatant disregard for our students' futures. When figures were released earlier this year, the outstanding maintenance within our schools totalled a staggering $775 million. And how much did this government allocate to address this backlog? Well, Speaker, it was just $65 million, which is 8% of what is actually needed. Within the electorate of Shellharbour, the school maintenance backlog sits at over $8.2 million and has just received $743,334 in funding. That's only about 9% of what is needed. The backlog at Oak Flats High School alone sits at over $1.7 million, and at the current rate of funding, it wouldn't be addressed for another 18 years, and that's without, Speaker, accounting for any worsening, maintenance or issues over those years. Cannahooka High School is a very similar story. The maintenance backlog there sits at over $950,000, and Adapto High School and Oak Flats Public School, they each require over $700,000 in additional funding. These issues and these backlogs, they're not luxuries that we're talking about, Speaker. They are very, very basic needs. And the most common issues that are reported were toilet and sewer upgrades, roof repairs, flooring, painting, guttering and broken windows that need replacement. This government is failing to deliver high-quality classrooms and educational facilities for our students, and our children deserve the best possible education, and that means providing the best possible learning environment. However, the New South Wales government seems content to allow our local schools to fall into a state of disrepair.
Not true.
Gonski was working. Hayes Park Public School was one of the most disadvantaged schools in my electorate, with 67% of students recognised as coming from low socio-economic background. Under Gonski years 1 to 4, they received over $388,000 in additional funding. Under this government's new bargain basement Gonski, Hayes Park Public School will receive $500,000 less in funding. And they are definitely not the worst off, Speaker. Warilla High School, Oak Flats High School, Lake Illawarra High School have lost approximately $1.1 million in funding each under Gonski 2.0. The electorate of Shellharbour as a whole has shamefully been stripped of $11 million in funding for our schools, and this is despite being led by a Premier that once promised, and I'll quote, make sure the federal government sticks to all of its commitments in relation to Gonski, unquote. In Shellharbour, across a total of just 7 schools, there are currently 36 demountable classrooms being used and taking up precious playground space. Adapto Public School has the greatest number of demountables impacting green space with a total of 12. Demountables, Speaker, were designed as temporary structures in our schools, and their overuse is a sign of the short-sightedness and the poor planning by this government. New South Wales will need to create 300,000 new school places to keep up with the needs of our population over the next 15 years. And this government isn't planning for the future and is even letting the inadequate infrastructure we currently have degrade. West Adapto, one of the fastest growing areas in this state, continues to be serviced by only 1 primary school and 1 high school. Yet the government has no plans for schools, has acquired no land on which to build them, and, Speaker, research has shown that this area will require 8 more primary schools and a further 3 high schools, and this is when all the local developments are completed and accounted for. 8 more primary schools and 3 high schools, and what are they doing? Absolutely nothing. In order to address the population growth in the area, Dapto Public School was relocated to West Dapto in 2004. This school was the first and to this day remains the only primary school in the area. At capacity, Speaker, Dapto Public School is struggling to meet the growing demand in this area. The education and the future of our state's children will always trump party politics, and I'm calling on the government to quit playing party politics and invest the money where it is undeniably needed, and that is our state's classrooms in our schools.